Did you know that Taiwan is possibly the most dangerous flashpoint on Earth? That an actual war could break out between the US and China over this island? Experts say that war would be catastrophic for everyone involved, which makes the delicate peace that currently exists between Beijing and Washington all the more critical to maintain.
Listen, I believe in a
But in Washington, there's a lot of political talk that makes war between the US and China sound inevitable.
Listen, I believe in a one-China policy, but I would be willing to fight for Taiwan.
How do we deter the PLA from invading Taiwan by denial?
Building up the military deterrent on the island of Taiwan, it's all to prevent a war.
The catchphrase being thrown around is deterrence. That's Washington speak for a massive arms buildup that proponents say will make China back down. But that's far from certain.
Taiwan is a non-negotiable issue for Chinese nationalism. If they think that the U.S. is trying to permanently separate Taiwan, they will use force. The more force the United States uses, the more force China will use. And if they lose any initial engagement, that's just going to be the first step in a much longer, much bloodier conflict.
So when does an arms buildup aimed at deterring become a provocation? It seems we're already on a path to war unless both sides provide credible assurances that they're committed to avoiding war and maintaining the status quo. When Nixon went to China in 1972, Taiwan was the greatest barrier to normalizing relations between the US and China. So a delicate understanding was formed. The US basically said it acknowledges China's claim to Taiwan, while also saying the island's legal status is undetermined. The US is open to peaceful reunification but doesn't support formal independence for Taiwan. Finally, and this is important, the US is ambiguous about how it might respond to a conflict between Beijing and Taipei. In return, China would pursue a peaceful approach to unification and only use force when absolutely necessary to prevent the permanent separation of Taiwan from China. Now, for more than 50 years, this understanding helped maintain peace in the Taiwan Strait and generated prosperity for all parties involved. But lately, the US and China have been escalating threats, and that's eroded trust. With China's increased military bluster against Taiwan, calls are growing in Washington for the US to explicitly commit our military to defending Taiwan.
We do need to change our policy and explicitly state clearly and deliberately that we will aid Taiwan if China goes for the jugular there. For decades, we've been ambiguous about that.
They call it strategic clarity. It's a major shift in policy that fundamentally goes against the US commitment about how it would respond to a Chinese attack on Taiwan. And that tests Beijing's trust in US intentions. With all this in mind, shouldn't we try to halt the slide towards confrontation and avoid forcing Beijing into a corner that only increases the likelihood of war? Should we also consider what the people of Taiwan want? Polls suggest they don't want to be swallowed up by China, but they don't want a war either. Wouldn't a less confrontational approach between Washington and Beijing serve the people of Taiwan better than a slow march towards a war in which their home becomes a battleground for two nuclear-armed superpowers? The US faces a geostrategic challenge in China, which means the stakes are high. The threat of war comes with incalculable costs. But our many shared vital interests still require cooperation and can bring benefits. So the US needs to keep a diplomatic door open if it wants to have a partner on the other side.